said, fellas, I'm not going to kneel and I'm not going to wear that t-shirt.
Jonathan Isaac is one of the NBA's most talked about players, not just for his defensive play on the court, but for the moment he stood when everyone else kneeled during the national anthem.
Before games, I'd be extremely anxious, and that's happened all through high school, the number one player in the state of Florida, in college, into the NBA.
He recalls some pivotal moments in his journey.
It's been my faith that has helped me, for the most about finding my identity in Christ and just being okay with who I am.
That conviction led him to launch his own shoe line, Unitas,
which was and is the first NBA signature sneaker with visible Bible verses on the outside.
In this episode, Jonathan shares how his faith has shaped his life and career. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick. Jonathan Isaac, so good to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Let's go back a bit into the past. I've known about you for a while. I started reading about your background and kind of where you've come from. And I realized that you had a similar affliction or issue that I did as a kid, and that was anxiety. Is something you suffered from, and you dealt with it with basketball. Okay, yeah. But so tell me a little bit about those early years.
I grew up in Bronx, New York. My dad, my mom, 4 brothers and 1 sister. And I would say when I was in New York, I didn't really have, that issue of anxiety or really like self-consciousness about who I was, did I fit in, all those different things. I was a pretty quiet kid, but we just loved it. We were in New York, we had friends, and we would play around in the neighborhood. It was just really normal, I would say. And then my parents ended up splitting up. Then I went from Bronx, New York to Naples, Florida. And that's when really everything changed. So I went from a predominantly Black community, Latino, to prominently white. And that's when, I think that was the first time in my life that I felt self-conscious. I remember, really trying to make friends at the new school. And my form of making friends was horseplay. And I'm a big kid. I was tall. And these little white kids. And my form of playing around was like child endangerment, to them. And so I got in trouble quite a bit. One time my mom got called to the office and the principal's like, we can't have your son endangering the lives of the other students. And she's just like, he doesn't mean it. Like, this is just, how he expresses himself whatsoever. And that was the first time that I was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm not the way that I perceive myself. Like, I'm actually a danger. And I need to kind of walk on eggshells and almost fight for the approval and the love for the people around me. And so I tried to do everything. I was the class clown. I was, always trying to make jokes, just trying my best to fit in and make friends. And basketball was the thing that really opened the door to that. As I, fell in love with basketball and started to get better, that's when I started receiving validation from my peers and the girls and everything like that. And so, but it also created in me this, this roller coaster of emotions where I really wanted to play well, I really wanted to do well, and I always felt like if I didn't, I was going to lose that validation and affirmation from other people. And so before games, I'd be extremely anxious, and that's happened all through high school. The number one player in the state of Florida, in college, into the NBA, and it's been an ongoing thing that I've worked through, and it's been my faith that has helped me, for the most about finding my identity in Christ and just being okay with who I am.
Something that strikes me about basketball, whatever that, physicality that you were expressing, as a kid that was actually getting you into trouble, probably on the basketball court, that was like a bit of a benefit.
For
right?
Sure. I kind of wish I still, cause I kind of tamed that, even going into basketball. So I became, this very shy, insecure guy, even though I was growing in talent. And so I probably wish I would have stayed in New York to play basketball for my whole life, because then I would have, came about a little differently.
So your process is actually becoming more out there, I guess,
right,
more
exactly.
Sort of, I don't know, more aggressive? Is there the
right
term?
I think, it probably sounds a little bad, but Yeah, I think as I went through that whole process, it was more like I became very inward focused, and always trying to pull back, always trying to decide on whether what I was going to say or do, how it would affect the people around me, how would they then perceive me, and so getting out of that or working to get out of that has produced a little more just natural aggressiveness, just being outward and not so inward focused.
It's fascinating, a parallel, so we have some parallel experiences that I don't really ever talk about, here we go. But so at some point you started getting good,
Right.
right? I mean, I think you were number one in Florida,
Yes.
right? Player. And so, at this point, there's more girls, more media now, right? People
Yeah.
are starting to
Yeah.
maybe appreciate a little too much. Just kind of tell me about that process and how you reacted to it.
It was awful, because it was like it was just so it's just again that roller coaster of emotions where uh, I'm being recognized for this player that I am. Inside, I don't feel like I'm a really great player, but I'm the number one player in the state of Florida, and I'm receiving this validation, and I love it. But at the same time, I don't want to lose it, and I felt like any mistake that I would make or could make would cause people not to love me anymore, or not care for me anymore, and so I was just always so nervous. I remember having an interview in high school. I think it was for like USA Basketball, and I was being interviewed by a woman, and she asked me a question, and I said, "Yes, sir." Like just because I was so like tense and nervous and not even listening to her, and I've had a couple interviews like that, and so it was difficult. It was pretty difficult growing up and trying to navigate, becoming a really good player in basketball and the kind of internal emotional turmoil that I was going through.
I was reminded of something, someone that I've admired for a long time and kind of follow is Denzel Washington. And he had this, he said something like fame is a monster, right? It kind of something that resonated with me. Not that I've had to deal with a ton of fame, but how do you react to that?
I think it's true. I think as humans, it's almost like we're not built for it. We're not built, and we really aren't manufactured in that way to be receivers of praise and everybody loving you, because it messes with us about our the way that we view ourselves. It's easy to become prideful. It's easy to become cocky or whatnot. But then you kind of lose yourself in it. And we've seen a lot of celebrities and people who have administered great fame to them, how it really does distort reality and causes a lot of breakdowns.
Of course, faith is very important to you.
Absolutely.
Right? Were you, as this fame was starting to build, were you looking for some way to deal with it, or were you kind of relishing in the fame, or was there some critical moment where you felt, okay, I have to change something?
Yes and no. I didn't really become a Christian until I got to the NBA, but I grew up in the church, and so I had somewhat of a foundation. And throughout the course of all of this, I was always kind of like falling back on it to where if everything was going great, I was like, I kind of want to be as far away from that as possible and just live my life and be like everybody else. But then if any hard times hit, any bad games, or just I was really dealing with that anxiety, I'd be in church. And so I kind of always saw it as, helpful, but just not in alignment with what I wanted in life. I wanted to be more liked and to be more praised and to be like the players that were around me. So I wanted to experience that. I didn't really come to faith until I got to the NBA.
And how did that happen?
Yeah, no, it's a dope story. So I got drafted to Orlando, and I'm getting into my new place, and I meet a guy on an elevator, and he says to me, "I can tell you how to be great." And I said, "How?" And he said, "You have to know Jesus." And I was like, "Man, I know Jesus. Me and him are close," but I wasn't living that way. When I got to the NBA, I was like, "Look, I want to experience everything that the NBA has to offer," and I did. But for something really deep inside me, kind of said, I thought this would be funner or better. It's really not all that it's cracked up to be. And at one point being out of the league and looking at all these guys and thinking, oh, they're so amazing and I can't wait to get there. And then being their teammates and just seeing how this life, that we live is, the intense pressure, what guys need to cope with everything that's going on. It's really difficult. And I kind of had that on the inside of me of going, man, I thought it'd be different. I thought it'd be more fulfilling. And so I remember going to chapel with the NBA, and the chaplain said Luke 6:46, which says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? And it really pierced me because for that first moment, I was like, oh, wow, I never heard this verse before, one. And it was kind of weird to see Jesus as kind of confrontational. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? And it really just struck me. And I remember thinking about it in the game, thinking about it before I went to sleep. And I pretty much said to myself, hey, it's either I'm not going to call myself a Christian anymore, or I really want to go through this to verify if it's true or not. And I dived into Christian apologetics, William Lane Craig, Frank Turek, John Lennox, all these different guys. I started watching all type of videos. But when I really started to believe was the love of Christ. The guy that I met in the elevator, I started hanging out with him, and he started to teach me about the love of God and what it all meant. And that was something that I didn't know that I needed, because I was so used to working for love and doing what I thought I needed to do to get people to love me. And the idea that Christ loved me for me and died on the cross for me set me free in a lot of ways. And I've been on a journey of growing in that belief. Mm-hmm. And the guy that I met on the elevator was actually a pastor, and he mm-hmm. became my pastor. And yeah, it's a really beautiful story. It's all in the book that I wrote about the moment, and mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll get to that. But yeah, really life changing. And I've been on that road of Christianity and trying my best to follow Christ and growing as a man, for quite a while now.
If you could summarize it, in a very, very kind of brief way, because you're a Christian from the beginning, with what is the biggest difference from the before
oh wow
and after?
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is internal. Growing in this relationship with Christ, I've seen how I've changed just as a person, about what I care about, what I hold dear, what's important to me. I was lost, in that stage of trying to fit in and trying to be somebody that I thought I needed to be, or that other people wanted me to be. I found myself in a lot of situations where I was just like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I smoking this? Why am I at this club right now? Why am I drinking? And it was to fill a void of fulfillment. And Christ has taken that place. And I look at myself now, and it's been a journey of growth and falling and getting back up and relying on His grace. But I've gotten to a place where I look at myself and I don't recognize the guy that I was before. And to me, it's the truth of the gospel that sin has entered the world. And the reason why the world is the way that it is today, all that we see, all the turmoil, all the evil that we experience, is because of sin. But God has made a sacrifice for us to be made right with Him. And in being made right with Him, then we do life with Him. And I've experienced doing life with Him as better than the life I was living before. In almost every way. Even though there's still difficulties, there's still hardships, inside of the gospel is the truth and the ability to handle it, and with God.
Yeah, I want to explore that a lot, because your faith obviously has been central to, I guess, some very high profile things that you've done over the last several years.
For sure.
Right. And that's something that I've covered a lot on this show, is talking with people who made seemingly tough decisions, but most of them will just tell me, I didn't have a choice. It's just kind of what I had to do. Wow. Right. But it often was connected with some very deep conviction or their faith, right? That there's some sort of, almost as if they didn't have a choice because their values were speaking to them so strongly.
Absolutely.
Right. Your pastor says, the darker the night, the brighter the light. That's, of course I get that from you, but what does that mean?
I think the way that he meant it was, from a Christian standpoint, and us being Christians, it's like this is why we're here, right? As the world gets darker, as the world gets more evil, as the world, uh, there's a Bible verse that I was reading yesterday, and it's, Paul is writing, and he's saying, in the last days, uh, people will be lovers of themselves and money. Uh, Evil will grow. All of these different things, and you look at the world today, and it's like, man, it's becoming more and more like what he laid out. Selfish and all these different things. The idea is that as Christians, in relationship with God and God living on the inside of us, that as the world gets darker, we get brighter in terms of attracting people that want to do life with Christ and see the difference between the way the world is and the way that we are and the way that we live. And so the darker the night, the brighter the light. And also just Christ, the darkness in my life, before I received Christ was really dark. And that only made him brighter in terms of looking for somewhere to go, looking for some type of relief. And he was the answer.
If you could go back to the younger Jonathan who was struggling with anxiety, struggling with this need to be accepted, is there something you would tell him?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the church, but I didn't really believe until later. And so I would tell them, you believe now, because it would have saved me from so many missteps, me being hurt or hurting other people. I would come back and just be like, it's the truth, it's the truth, believe it. And I think I would have saved myself a lot of heartache and trouble. And even with that anxiety, finding my identity, striving and growing and finding my identity in Christ has been the thing that has helped me the most with it.
Well, so if I can jump in, right? What's interesting to me is when I look back at my life, I think it seems like the moments that really were the darkest. When I look back at them now, they were the kind of the most valuable, and I wouldn't change them for the world because, well, they brought me here and helped me figure a lot of things out, and be someone who lives to be of service.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hear that. I think for me, it's like sometimes we don't have to go through things, and we can learn from other people's mistakes, and not make the same mistakes ourselves. So I could have saved myself a lot of a lot of trouble and heartache if I didn't do some of the things that I did because of the position that I was in.
Well, let's start talking a little bit about you taking a stand.
Yeah.
Quite literally. That's when I first became aware of you. Back in the early COVID days, there was this NBA COVID bubble.
Yep.
Everyone was in quarantine. The whole BLM thing happened, right? Which many people will remember. And there was this huge pressure for everyone to wear a BLM shirt. And it's just not in the NBA, it's all over society.
Right.
To kneel during the national anthem, in the NBA, and all sorts of related things. It's almost difficult
sports
to think back. Exactly. You didn't very prominently. And so just tell me about that whole situation, what happened, how it happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, every time that I talk about it and I think about it, it feels so surreal because it really just was craziness. Being inside of the moment, seeing everything that was going on. So you have the death of George Floyd and the spark of Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter organization and movement and everything like that. And I wasn't opposed to it at all. I understood where the humanity and where it all was coming from. But me being a Christian at the time, I was trying to figure out, what does this mean? What is an appropriate response that honors the truth and that honors giving an answer toward progress? And I remember having conversations with some buddies early on in the movement, and I would offer some of that in terms of Christ ultimately being the thing that can bring all of us together. And it was kind of like, we don't want to talk about that right now. Like that's not what this is about. Mm-hmm. And so although I understood where they were coming from, I kind of felt like, man, this movement may not be for me. uh, the tone and the rhetoric, some of the things that were going on. I was like, I don't know if I can give my allegiance, not that Black Lives don't matter, but give my allegiance to this movement because of the way that they're operating and speaking and everything like that. And so I remember, there were riots that were going on, and we were set to go into the bubble. And my pastor at the time was preaching a sermon on the moment that Jesus is captured by the Roman guard, and one of his disciples, Peter, takes out his sword and cuts off the guy's ear. And what he said was, if with what happened to George Floyd, we have an opportunity. If we respond in the way that's natural in terms of our nature, which is anger, resentment, retaliation, hatred, all these different things that will come natural to something like that happening, we're going to get the same result. Jesus said, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. And he said, if we could step into this moment with love, grace, mercy, and truth, there can really be progress and mending of the Black and white community, all these different things. And I believed that, and it really resonated with me that, man, like, I have an opportunity to love somebody that doesn't love me, or be the first one to reach across the aisle and lend a hand and see if they would, give a hand back. And that's just not what I saw with what was going on. And so I kind of just hid that in my heart. I didn't have this plan to speak up or anything like that, because I didn't know that there was going to be this moment in the bubble till we got in there. So we get into the bubble, and a team that's playing, we were going to play the next day. And so a team that was playing that today decided to kneel. And now there's this, consciousness and ripple effect that's going through. Everybody was just going, oh, shoot, if we don't kneel now, we're going to look like we're not a part of the movement, and that we don't believe that Black Lives Matter, and, the whole nine. And so now our officials call everybody into a room, all the team, like, hey, let's get a grip on what we're going to do. And they pretty much say, guys, whatever you're going to do, we'll do the same. Just let us know. And now it's a team only meeting. And we get into the team only meeting, and guys are pretty much like, look, we don't have a choice. There's no choice here. The team already knelt. If we don't kneel, then it's just going to be, it's going to make more chaos. And one of my teammates turned towards me and says, yo, Jonathan, what are you going to do? And I said, fellas, I'm not going to kneel, and I'm not going to wear that t-shirt. And, everybody's like, oh my gosh, here we go. One of my teammates is like, what is wrong with you? Why not? And I pretty much said, look, I see the problem. I'm not saying that I don't see the problem. I'm not saying that I didn't see what happened to George Floyd. I just believe that there's a better and greater solution to not only racism, but all the problems that we see in our world. Because ultimately, I believe that there are heart issues, and Jesus can change hearts because he's changed mine. And so I said, look, I can't throw stones from a glass house. I need forgiveness every single day. And that's not saying that we bypass, what people do and automatically forgive, and there's no retaliation, or there's no consequences for actions. But I pretty much said, I want to treat the situation the way that I would want to be treated if I was in it. And so we had that talk. We all left, and I just pretty much said, guys, look, I respect your decision to kneel. I don't feel like you guys are, doing something wrong or anything. I respect your decision. I understand why you're kneeling. I understand why this time is so emotional and what's going on. I just believe that there's a different solution. And so we break. I called my pastor that night, and I pretty much say, hey, this is the situation that's going to happen tomorrow. I need you to know that I'm going to be, they're going to destroy me. That's pretty much what I said. I said, look, I'm going to lose my black card. I'm going to be a sellout. This is not going to be good. It's pretty much what I said. And, my contract extension was coming up after this season in the bubble is when I was going to possibly sign a new contract. And I pretty much just trying to get him to rap, because he's not social media savvy or anything like that. So it was like, I'm trying to let him, pretty much trying to talk him into saying, don't do it. I'm like, yo, this is going to be huge. Like, they're going to drag me. And he said, Jonathan, you cannot stand for God and God not stand for you. And I was just like, dang, I got to do it. I felt, like you said, that conviction of this is the right thing for me. I believe that this was God saying this was the right thing for me to do. And I couldn't just let that go. And so the day came, and I just wore my jersey because I didn't have any other warm-ups or anything other than the BLM shirt. And I went out there and stood. I was kind of just praying under my breath, you know, asking God to like help me. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I believe that what I'm doing is about you and for you. And but I'm terrified, you know, of the repercussions and what could happen and what people are going to think. And I kind of just said, to heck with it. You know, this is the right thing for me to do.